You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Have you ever thought about what would happen if your airline window popped out? Or if you could build a jetpack using only machine guns? Turns out you can, but you really shouldn't. Hi, I'm Jill Chacha, host of a podcast that's for weird people who like learning about weird stuff. It's called Well, That's Interesting, and it's a comedy science-y show that tells the story behind the facts because, as it turns out, those stories are funny. The facts are bizarre, the stories are epic, and the laughter is plentiful. So, join the flock and listen to Well, That's Interesting wherever you do podcasts.
Well, guys, you know, we love a Russian-sized rabbit hole here at Queen's Podcast.
Oh, they're big.
Oh my gosh. We wanted to spend more time in revolutionary Mother Russia.
Yeah, because it's just so much fun.
It's so much drama. It's just so much, period.
And I'm here for it. In our last With the Matilda episode, we covered her and her hubby, Andre.
Mm-hmm.
Talked briefly about Andre's mom in that episode, but we're going to go down a whole rabbit hole about Duchess Marie Mecklenburg.
Ooh.
Who she was. She was like the only Romanoff to escape with all of her jewels from the Bolshevik Revolution. That's like my favorite.
Okay.
The end. Story over. Bye.
And that's it.
She was descended from Emperor Alexander II of Russia, and her bougie-ass blood got her hitched to a Russian Grand Duke. She also was the mom of Andre, the husband of Matilda Szczynska, that we covered from our last episode.
She was born May 14th, 1854, so she's a Taurus. And just the little that we touched on her in Matilda's episode, I feel like that came through. She is hard-headed, tenacious, and also reliable and loyal. And yeah, I think this all fits Marie pretty damn well. Her dad was Frederick Franz II, a Grand Duke, and her mom was a princess in her own right named Augusta Ruiz. All in all, the couple had 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl. Also, How spoiled are you going to be as the only girl?
I know, right? You get all of the love, all of the bows, all of the jewels, all of that stuff. So sadly, Marie's mom died when she was very, very young. So she was only 8 years old. And somehow, in Russia, they made this into a huge scandal.
That her mom died?
Yes, so let's wait and unpack all of that. Because on her official death records, mom died of a quote-unquote sudden heart valve inflammation. Oh. But word on the street is that she died of tuberculosis, which at the time would have been very taboo for a noble woman to die of.
But wait, why? Because tuberculosis was super common, right?
But back in the time, Russians viewed it as a sign of like being dirty and being lower. It was
a poor person's disease.
Yeah, a poor man's disease. And like legit, if they would have admitted that this was the cause of her death, her children would have literally been downgraded in all of their marriages. So they couldn't marry up. They would have had to marry down because mom died of tuberculosis.
Royalty's weird, man.
Yeah, right? They ended up doctoring up her death records to protect her children's legacy.
Marie's dad was sad, which, I mean, you would be, but he didn't wait too long to get remarried. He got hitched to his second wife in 1864, and they had 1 daughter about a year later. Unfortunately, his second wife also died not long after giving birth, because birthing babies back in the day was dangerous.
Yes, dangerous.
It's still this entire ordeal. Like, it's the definition of this whole thing.
He did marry a 3rd time, so Marine's dad married again. And lucky for us, this woman actually helped finish out raising our girl, Marie. Marie would have been about 14 when dad remarried for the 3rd time. So she was a little older, but she had been raised in a pretty weird time in history.
Yeah. Marie would have grown up during a time of wars. The Franco-Prussian War, to be exact. Her dad supported King Wilhelm I to unify Germany. And long story short, that we definitely don't have time for, it worked.
Yes. And
thus why we have a unified Germany now.
Well, I mean, Germany didn't do so many hot things in the next 20 years, 30 years, but we're
getting ahead of ourselves.
That. And at this point, Marie's dad is parading her around all of these German nobles because, you know, your only purpose in life as a noblewoman is to marry one of your cousins.
Barf. Barf. So, she's not getting any younger. TikTok girl, we got to get you engaged. So she was scouted by a few different suitors, and Queen Victoria tried hooking Marie up with her son, but it didn't work. Queen Vicky did note that Marie was very, very pretty. Mm-hmm. And eventually she was engaged to a man named George Albert I.
Marie is getting noticed by everyone. She has this certain sense of grace and style, and she's very engaging, and she knows how to carry on a conversation.
She's got that star quality.
Yeah, that's very rare, too, when you've been inbred for so many years. You just don't know how to carry on conversation anymore. She ended up getting noticed by someone else at the time, too. It was a man named Vladimir Alexandrovich. And when Marie and Vladimir met, there were sparks a-flying. Like, girl, it was love at first sight. And it's even quoted by Vladimir saying that when he first saw her, he noticed how wonderfully expressive her eyes were. So I just imagine it literally was love at first sight. They look into each other's eyes and it's just like, I love this person. So but she's not engaged to him.
She's kind of got this whole other fiance. Yeah. So, the fireworks were going off between Vlad and Marie pretty hot and heavy. So Marie decided to blow up her engagement to her previous boo, George Albert I. So I love this for her. I love that she had the self-confidence and the agency to be like, nope, I'm going to choose who I'm going to marry. And I like
the
Sky better.
Audacity,
I know.
A woman getting to choose who she wants to marry?
Yes, exactly. Now she's engaged and she's feeling like that connection. Good thing it worked out. Like, good thing that he wasn't like not actually that into her.
Yeah, right. It was a total douchebag.
Yeah, but now she is engaged to Vlad.
And there's just, Marie is Lutheran. And Vladimir had just joined this new fad called the Russian Orthodox Church. And when he asked Marie, he's like, hey, I want you to convert to Russian Orthodoxy. She's like, hard pass.
Thank you.
And this, again, scandal. People are like, what? You're about to marry a Grand Duke and all you have to do is convert and you don't want to convert? What's wrong with you?
Like, her not wanting to convert was a huge fucking deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it almost stopped them from getting married, and then she did convert. So, they took that very, very seriously in the Russian royal family, for sure. So, every potential bride just converted to their husband's religion then, including Vladimir's own mother. So, ye old future mother-in-law was slightly annoyed that Marie was, like, going against the grain. Some things never change. Sometimes mother-in-laws just get
always
pissed
hate
off.
their daughter-in-laws.
My mother-in-law loves me, so...
Well, what's not to love?
I know.
She's humble.
I know. I mean, I'm just so sweet and smart and life of the party. But no, Marie was putting her foot down. She's like, I'm not fucking doing it, you know? And eventually, Tsar Alexander II gave Marie permission to marry his son without having to convert. So, refusing to bow to the Tsar's religion and still getting the boy, like, she is doing the most out here, you know?
I know, like, how many royal women that we've covered have been able to tell the emperor, you know what? No, I still want to marry your son. And they're like...
I wonder if it's because Vladimir, I don't know this for sure off the top of my head, but I think he was, like, the youngest of several sons, right? So it's like, it's not like their kids were ever going to be in the line of succession or like, you know, king. Not like there's going to be a revolution where all of you die or anything. But maybe that was his reasoning behind it, is like, yeah, she doesn't have to convert. Their kids aren't going to be
They're not going to be
anyway.
important one day.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But to say that a woman turning down the emperor, you know, being like, nope, sorry, I'm not converting, that's kind of a big deal. A woman getting to choose her own religion apart from her husband. Yeah. She's setting a precedent. In fact, from here on out, women in Russia who married a Grand Duke did not have to convert to their religion. So she literally was the first one to say, no, I'm not doing it. And they're like, okay, it's a rule now. You don't have to do it if you're a Grand Duke or Duchess. However, that did not apply to our girl, Alexandra Feodorovna.
Yeah, because she was the
higher up. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like if you're gonna be an empress of Russia one day, you have to be orthodoxy.
But anything underneath that doesn't matter.
And she's the one that kind of set that precedent. I love that. So stand up for what you believe, unless you're going to be Empress of Russia.
Exactly, precisely.
So after 3 years back and forth over their religion, that's a long engagement for back then. The two were finally married on August 28th, 1874. And this was a powerful marriage. They were a power couple. Vlad, the son of a Russian emperor, and Marie was the great-great-granddaughter of Emperor Paul I of Russia. So arguably, if there was a shakeup in the nobility, any kids they have would potentially have claim to the throne. So Marie was now part of this powerful Romanoff family, which at this point had been on the throne of Russia for like 300 years.
Yes. And after their marriage, Marie took on the style of Her Imperial Highness. So what does that mean? I'm so glad you asked. So, if you're familiar with modern English monarchy, you know the term Her Royal Highness, His Royal Highness, HRH. Everybody knows that title. It means you're descended from a king, or in modern day, a queen. Well, His or Her Imperial Highness is a step above that. So it basically says that you're descended from an emperor who was over a bunch of different kingdoms. So it's essentially setting you above just being the daughter of a king. So it's like, I'm the daughter of an emperor. Ooh. That's literally what it was.
Yeah, that is a pretty bold move then. She's basically saying, I'm better than you to all the royals in Russia. And I mean, this is kind of her vibe.
Yes, it is. Very Taurus.
They move in to the Vladimir Palace. Nathan, how many rooms does the Vladimir Palace have?
Not 100, not 200, 360 rooms in the Vladimir Palace.
Oh,
so you could have
God.
Your family, your family's family, and even the townsfolk can just come on over and stay the night.
And you would never have to see anybody. That is so many rooms. So our girl was bougie. She did what she wanted, and she was just dripping in jewels. I mean, everything's coming up Marie right now. Like, all she does is win, 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 no matter what so far.
Seriously, in almost every single picture that we have at this time, she's wearing this beautiful crown, gorgeous earrings, a necklace that's just a huge-ass fucking rock around her neck. One of her most famous pieces, we're going to get a lot into her jewelry much later in, but I have to touch on two big ones.
Ooh.
So one of her famous pieces that she had was a 5-carat ruby, NBD, from Josephine Bonaparte, so Napoleon Bonaparte wifey. And she also had a 100-carat emerald from her great-great-grandmother, Catherine the Great.
Great-great-grandmother.
Yeah, so she's notorious for her jewelry collection. And like I said, we'll go into that a little bit later. So if you're listening to this episode waiting on pins and needles, sorry, you got to wait a little longer. She bougie.
I just found a picture of that ring, I think. The ruby one that belonged to Josephine. Oh, my goodness. Oh.
Katie is Distracted by the shiny things.
Yes. The moral of, like, that is just my life summed up. And then Katie saw something shiny and forgot what she was talking about. She's got a big-ass palace. She's got lots of jewelry. She's got, in the words of Aretha Franklin, beautiful gowns.
I'm just imagining Aretha Franklin. They're like, tell us something great about Marie. And she's like, beautiful gowns.
Beautiful gowns. Beautiful gowns.
She'd be okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah, Marie would be like,
okay.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you for noticing. So she loved to show all of this off. She was an excellent host. She fit right in. And she also loved gambling
but it was super popular, especially in Russia at the time and everywhere
rich
else.
People. Look, we're just never gonna relate to some of these people. Like, their lives are just different than ours. But yeah, so she loved gambling, and she ended up getting banned from court when she kept gambling after the Tsar declared it illegal. Again, just being like, I'm gonna do what I fucking want, and defying powerful men, which I love. Surprisingly, we love this.
Marie and Vladimir would go on to have 5 children, 4 boys and 1 girl, one of which was Andrei Vladimirovich, the future husband of Matilda Szczynska.
Yeah, in 1880, Marie got her first taste of revolt. The imperial family was about to sit down for dinner, and Marie was running super late because one of her kids was sick.
And Tsar Alexander VI was actually worried about her kids, and he ended up staying behind and checking on them, which was very peculiar for Alexander because he was one of those prompt individuals, which me and Katie appreciate.
Yes.
When you say 2 o'clock, you're here at 2 o'clock.
Absolutely.
And just as Alexander is saying, okay, let's delay the dinner just for a little bit, boom, there's a huge explosion.
Marie has a quote on the event, and she said, "At this moment, the most awful explosion rent the air. The dining room vanished from our view, and we were plunged into impenetrable darkness. Poisonous gas filled the room, suffocating us, as well as adding to our horror."
Exactly.
Alexander II got hella assassination attempts, because he's the one that freed the serfs.
Yeah. So it gives you just like that quote just gives me this scary visual image of just like you can literally see the room exploding and then coughing and like not knowing where you are.
Yeah, the dining room vanished.
Disappeared.
That's crazy to envision.
So what had happened was a group of revolutionaries were tired of all that royal bullshit, and they decided that they were going to plant 125 pounds of dynamite in the dining room to kill the imperial family.
125 pounds of dynamite? How did they do that without anybody noticing?
They had to have snuck it in with the servants and all of that and just kind of planted it throughout the dining room. It was a well thought out plan by the revoltists. I can't think of the right word.
Revolutionaries?
Yes, revolutionaries. There we go.
Revolters.
Revolteries. So the entire reason that the family escaped death, the imperial family, was because Marie's kid was sick. So if I was that kid, I would be holding it over everybody's head for the rest of my life. I'd be like,
well, you'd be dead if it wasn't for me.
Exactly. So can I have a palace, please?
Yes.
Have you ever thought about what would happen if your airline window popped out? Or if you can build a jetpack using only machine guns? Turns out you can, but you really shouldn't. Hi, I'm Jill Chacha, host of a podcast that's for weird people who like learning about weird stuff. It's called, well, That's Interesting, and it's a comedy sciencey show that tells the story behind the facts, because as it turns out, those stories are funny. Every Thursday, I tell the tale behind a new, odd discovery, like how researchers found 2 mysterious structures surrounding Earth's core, or how it's actually possible to stop hiccups using a rectal massage. Yes, there's a story behind that, no pun intended, and I tell the story because storytelling is the perfect way to learn and remember. The facts are bizarre, the stories are epic, and the laughter is plentiful, so join the flock and listen to Well, That's Interesting wherever you do podcasts.
Hello, listeners. This is Anne Bogle, author, blogger, and creator of the podcast, What Should I Read Next?
Since 2016, I've been helping readers bring more joy and delight into their reading lives. Every week, I tackle all things books and reading with a guest and guide them in discovering their next read. They share 3 books they love, 1 book they don't, and what they've been reading lately. And I recommend 3 titles they may enjoy reading next. Guests have said our conversations are like therapy, troubleshooting issues that have plagued their reading lives for years, and possibly the rest of their lives as well. And of course, recommending books that meet the moment, whether they are looking for deep introspection to spur or encourage a life change, or a frothy page-turner to help them escape the stresses of work, school, everything. You'll learn something about yourself as a reader, and you'll definitely walk away confident to choose your next read with a whole list of new books and authors to try. So join us each Tuesday for What Should I Read Next? Subscribe now wherever you're listening to this podcast, and visit our website, whatshouldireadnextpodcast.com, to find out more.
Oh my gosh. You know what? Marie was just as bold with her statements. At one point, she said openly that her husband would make a much better emperor than the next guy in line. Woo-hoo!
Just coming out in the open and being like, you know what? My husband will be such a better emperor than that dude next in line.
Ugh.
What?
Yeah. And this is something that would continue. Marie would constantly state that her kids would be better rulers than the people actually in line next. So our little hard-headed Taurus started her nonstop journey to put one of her sons on the throne.
So it's time, Katie.
It's time.
Russian rabbit hole sequence.
Engage!
Gonna go down the royal lineage. So let's fast forward a little bit. And Tsar Nicholas II and Alexandra Feodorovna are on the throne now. Marie's oldest surviving son decided to marry his first cousin.
Family tradition.
Because you have your cousins and you have your
cousins.
Well, that's not how it worked in life, and that's not how it works in Russia. So in Western Europe, you have to get the Pope a dispensation to be able to marry your cousin or sister. Just ask the Habsburgs. But he's like so far away from Russia, the Pope is. So the Tsar has to stand in and say, hey, it's okay if you marry and have incest babies. I don't know.
And Nicholas II did not give permission for this marriage, probably because he sussed out this marriage arrangement as a threat to his own rule. He was like, this is going to be too powerful of a couple. Absolutely not. And he stripped Marie's oldest son of all his imperial titles, military jobs, and pulled all his funding. And he was banished. He was like, get the fuck out of Russia. You have to go to France or some shit. Like, okay, Nicholas, talk about insecure much, you know?
Yeah, right?
God.
That's tiny dick energy.
Yes, yes.
So Marie's husband at this point, he white boy rages, which is just basically like him yelling and screaming behind doors, being like, Nick is a dick. And
punching a wall.
Yeah, punching a wall. And Marie's like, yes, sweetie, yes, he is. And then whenever he goes to talk to Nicholas, he's like super duper calm. And he's like, you know, that decision, kind of lame. So I think, you know, with a little bit of a tummy ache, I think I'm going to resign from the army. I mean, I'll still keep the titles and the money, so we good.
Just not do any of the work, though. Sadly, after 4 years, his brain couldn't take it anymore, and Marie's husband, Vladimir, died of a cerebral hemorrhage. Marie was fucking devastated. I mean,
it was the love of her life.
She wore mourning clothes for the rest of her life, but eventually she shifted that into trying to push her sons. Like, she took that energy that she had focused on that relationship and now is gearing it towards, like, let's get one of my baby boys on the throne.
Yeah, so all of that passion and all that, you know, power that she had for her husband, she's now channeling into her children.
Yeah.
So let's just wrap up this Russian lineage dumpster fires. Nicholas II needed an heir, you know, in case he should die. And there was technically already an heir, Nicholas's son, Alexei, but he was a child. He had hemophilia, so he wasn't expected to live that long. You know, that whole Rasputin thing.
Rasputin of the Russian queen. Do you know that song?
No, I do now.
No, but do you know the song from the 70s? I'll send it. I downloaded that Just Dance game the other day, and that's one of the dances on there is the Rasputin song. So I've had it stuck in my head. I'll send you a YouTube video. Let's go on.
So they're looking for someone to back up Alexei should he die, and that would have been Nicholas's brother, and then Marie's late husband, who just passed, Vladimir. They would have been next in line.
Right.
But Nicholas's brother pulled a Princess Jasmine from Aladdin and married a commoner and was stripped of his titles. And now that Vladimir White Boy raged himself to death, Marie's exiled son, Kirill, was next in line. God.
Oh, God. Let's dig ourselves out of that shit. Yeah.
It got real dark there for a minute.
Tsar Nicholas knows that his claim to the throne is getting weaker and weaker. So he invites Marie's son, Kirill, back from Russia. He reinstates his imperial title, military positions, and all that funding. And as a result, Marie finally decides to convert to Russian Orthodoxy.
Yeah, that is the official, Queen's podcast statement. That's why. I mean, there were some accounts of her saying that she actually converted when her son was injured in the Russo-Japanese War. So the story is that he was injured. He was not knocking on death's door. Mm-hmm. And she ended up praying to the Virgin Mary for her son's safety while he was fighting in exile. And then the Virgin Mary apparently was like, okay, cool, and helped him out. But that story, I think, was the story that they told the population as to why she converted. But the actual reason behind closed doors was because she wanted her sons to ascend the throne. And as a part of that, she had to convert to Russian Orthodoxy.
Got it. I also read somewhere that she just really liked all the fancy ceremonies.
Yeah.
She liked the glitz and the over-the-topness and all the ceremony stuff. So, yeah, probably a little bit of everything, including the vision, because why not? So there's a rumor that I don't know if I believe, but let's go ahead and throw it in there, that allegedly Marie planned a coup against the Tsar in winter 1916, early 1917. Marie and our girl Alexandra Fyodorovna, they are like water and oil. They do not mix. They are not friends.
Yeah, and honestly, I just think that Marie was just kind of scared of her.
Alexandra?
Yeah, because she had this reputation and she was hanging out with Rasputin and having all these weird... So I think she was more like...
This girl's unhinged.
Exactly.
Yeah. So she tries to get a plan together to overthrow Nicholas, but it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't gain any traction. But
yeah, they didn't hop on board. They're like, girl, there's already enough problems. We don't need any more.
Well, she was really anti-Rasputin. She was like, that guy ain't right.
So she was very scared of Alexandra Fyodorovna because she associated with somebody like Rasputin.
And she was like, guys, the vibes are off with this Rasputin guy.
Our girl is now part of the Russian Orthodox Church, which I'm pretty sure in real life she was just kind of slightly annoyed that she had to do that. But hey,
whatever.
Everything's going to go great, right? Until it doesn't.
Until it doesn't, yeah. There's just one tiny problem, and it's called the Russian Revolution. The bulls are back in town, the bulls are back in town. And by that, obviously, we mean the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks forced Tsar Nicholas to abdicate the throne, March 1917. So the shit has officially hitteth the fan.
So, all right. This sounds like a reasonable time to hightail it out of Russia, right?
Get the fuck out of town, right?
Nope. Marie's like, can we just stay a little bit longer, in the southern region of Russia, Caucasus? Her sons, Matilda Kaczynska, and they all decide, we're going to try and ride this war thing out. Sounds great.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's what we talked about, in the Matilda episode, with how it was they just kind of chilled for 2 years, hoping that this whole thing would blow over. And eventually it was like, oh, this is not going to blow over. Y'all need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, and Marie's like that one person that's like, everything's fine. We can totes
totally
right out this storm.
fine.
This storm's going to blow
go,
over.
go.
Everyone else is like, girl, this isn't a storm. This is like a full-blown Category 5 hurricane. We need to get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out. Nathan and I come from a part of the world where we know way too much about hurricanes and evacuations. Yes. And there is always that one family that's like, it's just a little bit of rain, y'all.
And you're like, no, it's a death storm.
No, you gotta get the fuck out. And so she was just being like, it's just a little bit of rain, y'all. And everyone's like, no. So after staying about a year, they move again to Anapa, Russia, literally just like 30 miles east of the Crimean Peninsula on the Black Sea. And Marie's son is like, yeah, Mom, this is more than just a little bit of rain. Like, the Bulls aren't just back in town. They are knocking on the door. They have taken over the town. We have been served a get the fuck out of here
sandwich.
Yes. We gotta go, Mom. We got to go.
So after months of staying in Anapa, a general of the White Army, so remember, from our Matilda episode, the Russians were divided at the time, right? There were the Reds, who were the communists, obviously.
The Bolsheviks.
And the Whites, the anti-communists, the anti-Bolsheviks. So the general of the White Russians is like, Marie, girl. It's over. There's literally no chance we're ever going to win this. And he was absolutely right.
Well, because she's like, Kirill's going to be the next emperor once this all blows over. Like, I'm finally going to have what I've always wanted. And it's like, honey, you are living in a state of delusion. This is not happening.
So she finally got convinced that maybe I should go into exile to Venice.
Marie is like kicking and screaming the entire way. But we know that she was one step ahead of everybody. And so, like, when Matilda left her house and thought she was coming back, she didn't take any of her valuables with her because she thought, I'm going to be coming back. I'll get all of them. Marie was like, just in caseies. She took all her jewels with her. She's like, I might need these on the boat. I might need these while we're in exile. And she was right. She's got all her jewels. They're basically in poverty, but she's got all her jewels. And as a history nerd who loves sparkly things, I am so happy that she decided to do that. These are pretty much the only remaining jewels that we have from the Romanoff family.
Yep.
Anything having to do with the royalty, again, like we talked about in Matilda's episode, like looted and destroyed during the revolutions.
About it, her taking these jewels is a way for her to secure her children's future, right?
Yeah.
Because if worse came to worse, they could sell them, they could barter them, they could get money, they could get land.
Because they don't have skills to get jobs.
No.
I listened to a podcast the other day on, I think it's History Extra, where they were interviewing a woman that wrote about people that escaped the Russian Revolution. And it was really interesting that they talked about the noble families that went to Paris and stuff. It was all the women that were able to get jobs because in polite society, in the nobility, women learned to sew, women learned to play an instrument, women learned to dance. And so a lot of women from the nobility, when they moved, got jobs as seamstresses or piano teachers or whatever. And it was the men that didn't have any skill. They were like...
They were just taught how to run a country. And it's like, we don't need you to run a country because we already have a ruler. So
yeah, and we're good. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting that it was the women that had skills to pay the bills.
Skills to pay the bill.
See that in Matilda's episode because she opened a dance studio.
Yep. And so that's literally the women in history are the ones that are like, okay, we need to actually secure the future of this family and make sure that they live.
Hey y'all, spooky season is here. And if you're looking for a show to whet your appetite for a little haunted history, then I'd like to invite you to check out Southern Gothic, a chart-topping history podcast that explores some of the most infamous legends, folklore, ghost stories, and hauntings of the American South. We've covered all sorts of stuff from the Bell Witch of Tennessee to the disappearance of the Confederate submarine, the H.L. Hunley, not to mention our deep dives into the local lore of some of America's oldest and most haunted cities, like New Orleans, Charleston, and St. Augustine. So, if you're ready for a little good old-fashioned Halloween storytelling with a commitment to quality historical research, then be sure to check out Southern Gothic today. It's available now on all your favorite podcast apps.
Hello everyone, Stakuyi here.
And I'm Gabby.
And we are the hosts of History of Everything, a podcast which you can probably guess by the name is, well, it's about everything. Do you want to know why people thought potatoes were evil and would give you syphilis? Are you curious about all the stories of the terrible and stupid ways that people have kicked the bucket over the years? Do you want to hear tales about all of the different badasses of history and the lives that they had brought to life? Well, if so, then look no further. History of Everything is just the right podcast for you. It's available on Spotify, Pandora, and anywhere else that you get your podcast from. Join us for some fun and just see how weird and wacky history can be.
And her jewels were one of those. So we're going to go down dripping in Jules Eleganza rabbit hole now.
It's my favorite rabbit hole, honestly.
Seriously, guys. She had a fuckload of really expensive shit. And she's not just going to give that away. Like I said,
right.
She's going to make sure that her kids have money and land in the future.
Right. And these jewels were still in a palace safe in Russia. So she had a guy named Albert Stopford smuggle them out of Russia and get them to her safely in France. And so now she's got all these jewels. What do you do with all of them? She can't just pack them up in a box and put them on the boat. They would have totally got stolen, you know? A bunch of really desperate people in really desperate situations. You see some diamonds, you're going to take them, you know?
So Marie decides to sneak all these jewels on board in some pretty sneaky and smart ways. So first, she puts all of her quote-unquote smaller jewels, puts her diamonds and smaller gems in bottles. And then she makes this wax and ink mixture and then pours it inside of the bottle to cover up the jewels so you can't see them.
Interesting.
The second way she was able to sneak on some of the bigger things, so like the crowns and the tiaras and all of that, she actually ended up fastening little paperweights on the ends of it, dipping it in wax, and then putting wicks on the end of so that it made it look like a religious candle. So that again, she's like a candle merchant, I guess. It's like how she tried to like pass all this off.
I just collect a lot of candles. Don't stop asking about my candles.
Right? They're just my fancy Jesus candles.
We need some light. Can we light one of your candles? Absolutely not.
So if you think about it, it's pretty ingenious way to sneak something over because after she gets to France, she can literally just chisel off all that wax and just smooth it over, and then she's got her jewels again. So they're not damaged, they're perfectly hidden. So, I mean, whenever I read that, I was like, what an ingenious way to sneak on all of these precious heirlooms of the Romanoff family, and no one had any idea.
I wonder how she thought about that. Like, I wonder if, like, that was something that people did back then, or, like, how she got that idea. I'd love to know. Obviously, we'll never know, but I just wonder, like, did somebody tell her? Or
I'm
did
sure
she just come up with
but it's just such a cool way to be like, how did she think of that, right?
Yeah, well, we know that, I mean, unfortunately, with Alexandra Fyodorovna, she told all her daughters to sew their jewels into their corsets.
Yeah,
but that didn't go great. So obviously, sneaking your jewels out was top of mind for everybody. But that's so clever. Anyway, now the moment you've been waiting for. We're gonna talk about all of her jewels.
I can't wait.
So we already mentioned the 5-carat ruby. that was originally owned by Josephine Bonaparte. Future episode for us, I'm sure.
100%.
She also had that 100-carat emerald from Catherine the Great. I love emeralds.
I'm pretty sure someone that goes and gives you like a sapphire, you're going to be like,
I'm not going to be like,
ugly.
hard no. No, but like specifically, I love emeralds.
So speaking of, we've got emeralds, rubies, and now we have to talk about her famous sapphire collection.
Yes.
It was one of the things that she was really known for because she received these as a collection and a lot of other things that she received on her wedding for her wedding gift. Like people that were at the wedding were required to bring like at least one gold plate and one gold something. So it was like she had standards, honey.
I should have done that for my wedding.
I would have not gone to your wedding.
You would have been like, here's a thing that I spray painted gold. Can I please have free alcohol now?
Right. So this famous sapphire collection was actually from Charlotte of Prussia.
Okay.
So originally, the sapphire crown that she had worn or received was done in the old Russian style. And you know, it just had, y'all don't have the picture in front of you. Katie, you do. It's the one.
It's this first one, right? That's the old Russian style. Okay.
So it's what we would think as the normal crown. That's just, you know. Like
and I can definitely post on Instagram too. So if you don't follow us on Instagram, we can put those up there.
So it's the old style, except, you know, it has a shitload of sapphires on it, including a 137.2 carat, and it was a cushion cut sapphire, so huge. It's that big one in the middle on the crown photo.
I knew which one you meant. The big one.
The big one.
I don't know. Which do you prefer, the old fashioned style or the new fashion style?
I prefer the old one, if I'm being honest, because it feels more whimsical. But she, you know, Marie was annoyed because it's not the latest fashion. She's the beauty queen. She's the one that everybody's looking at. Right. She's the star of the show. So she commissioned some guy named Cartier. No big deal. She's like, hey,
maybe you've heard of him.
Yeah. Can you come up with a new design for me? And she wanted it in the design of the Kokoschnik. I hope I'm saying that right. Kokoschnik style tiara, which that was all of the rage in Russia at the time. And that's the style that she wanted.
I love it. So let's talk about this style a little bit. When most of us think about modern royal crowns, it's what our girl Marie brought to the scene. It means it looks kind of like a headdress, except like it's got millions of dollars of silver and jewels and diamonds on it. Sometimes they would let their natural hair show in the back or attach a piece of fabric to give it like that full like Mother Mary, Virgin Mary vibes going on.
You know what I'm talking about, like the big headdress looking crown. Yeah. So the reason we mention this style of crown is because it is the style of the most recognizable crown, in my opinion, the Grand Duchess Vladimir tiara. So why is it so famous? Because it was the late Queen Elizabeth II's favorite tiara. So if you ever see a picture of Queen Elizabeth with this crown on, it is the iconic crown. Like, it is the one that I think, when I think Queen Elizabeth, that crown stands out in my head because it's the one that she wore the most often.
Right. And she would change out the stones in it from time to time. The description reads from the Royal Collection Trust: the crown consists of intersecting circles set with brilliant diamonds, each hung with a claw-set pendant pearl. And you could pretty much switch out that pearl. So you could switch it out to a ruby. You could switch it out to an emerald, depending on what you're wearing.
Yeah.
Get it to match. I mean, it really is stunning. How fucking heavy do you think, like in the Alexandra Feodorovna episode, I remember like her crown that she had to wear at her wedding gave her a migraine. Like, these are, when they're real jewels, and there's so many of them, that's fucking first world problem. Not even first world problem. 1% problem. So anyway, with all of her jewels on board, and they're all on the boat again, they're traveling to Venice for safety. So they go from Venice
to Switzerland, and then finally they arrive in their destination of France. But all this traveling, Marie is on the older side, and it's really starting to take a toll on her health. She's not used to living like a refugee. She's used to living as the life of the party. She's the grand hostess. She's super far away from all of these lands that she had fought for her sons to have. And now she's been banished to a villa in France that's like her daughter-in-law's. So she's literally just like...
Who she does not approve of.
And so she's just not having a time of her life.
I'm just trying to think from her point of view, because she is a bit of a snob, as most royalty are.
Yeah.
And she thinks that her kids are going to be king one day, and it's like, you want to marry a ballerina?
What are you doing?
What are you... that has slept with 2 of your cousins?
She's not doing well, guys.
And Matilda's like, it's my house. I mean, you don't have to be here if you don't want to be. And she's like, okay.
So Marie died, sadly, on September 6th of 1920 at the age of 66. She was surrounded by her family in the villa in Contrexeville, France, and she was buried there at the chapel of Saint Vladimir and Saint Mary Magdalene. Eventually, when her son and wife, Matilda, that she didn't quite like that much, when they both passed, they ended up being buried next to Marie.
What a life. I do what I want life.
I know.
Except for stay in Russia, but...
She was hard-headed, yes. She was ambitious.
Outspoken.
She was bougie. She was
bougie.
Bejeweled.
She was bejeweled. She made candles. She had a hobby.
She had a hobby. I mean, what is not to love about her? So everybody, I think we should raise a glass to Duchess Marie of Mecklenburg.
Raising my boxed wine over here. So,
cheers,
which Marie would
bitches.
hate. Marie would hate. She'd be like, wine out of a cardboard box? Are you a peasant? And I'd be like, kind of, yeah. Well, that was a fun story, Nathan. Thank you for going down that rabbit hole.
I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we love you.
Catch you next time.